The following podcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
So we think, what a terrific day one of the championships we had on the remarkable surface prepared by Michael Wood. We look ahead to day two. Brilliant time of year. Can't wait for it, Benway.
No, it's going to be really good fun. And for those who enjoyed day one, it really was an entree, wasn't it? Because everything that we have coming up on Saturday and the Saturday beyond that, for what it's worth, is just awesome. Storylines everywhere you look. We'll discuss a few of maybe the controversies, things we could tinker with down the track, and hopefully the powers that be listen.
Speaking of tinkering with things, our jocks are vying for the Nathan Berry medal, and it's a prize that they absolutely covet in that jockey's room. I do want to bring up, though, the races that count over the course of the championships to get the 3-2-1 points, which go towards the total in the hope of winning the medal.
So who's currently leading?
So at the moment, Blake Shin, James McDonald and Damien Lane are currently leading together, tied on 4 points, followed by 3 points, Tyler Schiller, Jason Collett and Kayla Nisbet. So last weekend, we had the 4 Group 1s and the Country Championships final count for votes. None of the Group 2s, none of the Group 3s. This weekend, we have the 4 Group 1s, 2 of the Group 2s, 1 Group 2 doesn't count, plus the Provincial Midway Championships final. I'm just finding it a little bit difficult to get my head around that. How can you choose 2 Group 2s but not the last one of the day? That makes no sense to me. But also, I look at Tyler Schiller. He was the only jock last Saturday who rode 2 black type winners, a Doncaster and the last race of the day on Facile, and he's only on 3 points. That doesn't sit entirely well with me.
No, and deserved probably double points for the Doncaster ride. And maybe James deserved double points on Riff Rocket. So if we are to change it, common sense, and I'm sure they have their reasonings. I don't know what they are, but I'm sure they have their reasonings. Common sense would say have every race of the championships contribute towards the Nathan Berry medal.
Just makes sense.
Can you see a problem with that?
No. Why?
I don't actually know the answer. I don't know why they would have gone down this path to start with. And if it were just the Group 1s and the country and provincial championships,
yes,
I can probably live with that. It's a little weird to not have every race, but I could live with that. To have some Group 2s and not others, no Group 3s, yeah, you're right. Riding honours went to him, and yet he isn't leading.
I just think you want to reward, obviously, rides that win races in those black type events, but we're at the championships. It's the grand finals of Australian racing. Every race means something over these 2 days, whether they be those finals, the listed races, Group 3, Group 2s, Group 1s. They all mean something, and everyone has been targeting these races. I just think it's very strange that they shouldn't all be counted for. I mean, the 3 jocks at the top of that list, they had great days out. Frosty Lane winning the TJ Smith on Chain of Lightning, James McDonald winning the Derby with a pearler of a ride on Riff Rocket, and then Blake Shin, he ran second in 2 Group 1s and he's at the top, but the guy who won a Group 1 and a Group 3 double is below. So I just think going forward, let's just have all the races. It's 20 races over the course of 2 days. It would make it even more competitive.
And I don't think anyone cares historically looking back to how many points people had to win. So it's not like you're going to say, oh, they won with 14 points in year 1 and now this person had 30 points in year 26. Like, I don't think there's that comparison. It's an honour roll and that's it.
Yeah.
And it is an honour, and it's probably one that should be spread across all the races. Complete agreement.
One of the big races on Saturday, of course, is the Oaks, and we cannot go through the Oaks without going through Zardozi Gate, and it has been one hell of a ride over the last couple of weeks.
It's been a roller coaster, and I will say that it's one of the tougher losses that I've had, and that's hard to kind of think of considering they didn't even run.
Are you okay?
Not really. So much so that I've almost refused to talk about the Oaks, which is very hard in the role that I have. People have said to me, "Oh, so now should we be backing Zardozi in the Oaks?" I said, "I don't know who you're talking about, and I don't know what race you're talking about."
Aww.
So my thoughts on it are that when I was waking up 5-6 times to that storm Friday night through to Saturday, I just couldn't fathom the idea of us even racing. And I can only imagine that was the same for a few of the trainers. Now, come 1 or 2 p.m, a few of them, and I'm not saying they were, but a few of them probably thought we should have run. And this is a bit of a shame. But if we are going to have any learnings from it, it has to be that in those sorts of circumstances when no one knows what's going on, you cannot anticipate. Even the most optimistic couldn't have anticipated that track was going to be as good as it was. You've got to give people extra time to make the call.
It was outrageous that scratchings weren't postponed. I know that stewards had other things on their minds in terms of making sure that surface water at the 1,000-metre mark was off the track. But honestly, if they had postponed scratchings to 8:15, a lot of those trainers would have been sitting there at 7:30 going, well, if we haven't heard what's going on, my natural assumption is going to be that this track is borderline unraceable because they waited so long. Now, that wasn't the case. They were just waiting for that patch of water to subside, and they were very confident about that. But I can understand a trainer at 7:30, no decision to race, going, well, this surely indicates that we're going to be on a heavy 27.
I wouldn't begrudge anyone.
No.
Like, we're talking retrospectively, hindsight, what would you have done, which is just not the situation. I would not begrudge any trainer that said, you guys have got question marks, so I've got question marks. Not racing, we have another grand final in a week. But just back to the bet itself, I should apologise to anyone who's listened because really they've done their dough as well. But I'm more than happy to be in a position, $26, $16, $13, all in for a horse that will probably jump favourite when it's a proven wet tracker and we get a wet track and they've accepted they're their race day morning. You just have to, sometimes the great game gets the better of you.
Yeah, and you shouldn't feel like you're at fault for any of this.
I am at fault, and I'll accept that.
Not at all.
And I'll send the bill on to James. No.
Who are you on? No, you're going to stick with her in the Oaks?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, wow, it's real sour grapes, isn't it?
I don't think I'll have a bet because I would probably have Orchestral on top.
Yeah, I've got to have Orchestral on top. Everything that we hear about this New Zealand filly, what she's done since the Vinery, she has continued to improve. She steps back up to a trip which is probably her real go, having won a derby over a very similar distance in New Zealand. She's very short, but I think she's very, very good. So I'm happy to be tipping her. I probably won't back her because I can't dive into $1.60. But, I think the market has got it right in terms of how good she is.
Yeah, she is particularly short, but you're looking at options away. And if you're not in the Zardozi camp, it's probably a race in 3, to be honest, but she's definitely the primary one. So I had to spend I drove down to Gosford yesterday. Lovely meeting, by the way, midweek meeting. And they've done that a little bit lately. We went to Wyong and then we went to Gosford. And it was, I don't know, it's just a different vibe. It's good to see everybody out there. Everyone's that little bit more relaxed. And I quite enjoy the racing with the mountains out there as well. But after that, I needed to sit down and break down this Queen Elizabeth because we've got a runner-up by runner, which everyone can see on the website. It unfortunately does lead to quite a logical conclusion. But have a read. I kind of mount a case for and against on every runner through the race and hopefully come up with an answer. How did you read it?
You've done a great job in doing that runner by runner. It's on the Sky Racing website.
Represent last week, by the way. Celestial, give it strength.
Yeah, you did a great runner by runner. Put him on top. What
Slammed
an amazing
the price
ride.
of the favourite. No, that was one of the rare wins. In fact, we'll call it a break even with Zardozi.
Yeah,
and
okay,
Celestial.
that's fair.
Yeah.
The way I'm seeing it, Via Sistina, first up in Australia, took our breath away. I think she even surprised the camp as to how well she ran fresh that day. And I think she's going to be very difficult to beat. But I agree with you. Going through the form, there was a couple that I went, hello, Lindemann and Koval.
Yeah.
On the quick backup, 1600, back up to the 2000, which is certainly both of their preferred trips. Is this a little Chris Waller masterstroke?
Yeah, well, you have a look at Lindemann, for example, and the horse that it absolutely smashes Colourpaw comes out and beats another horse that essentially goes around in this race at half the price. So you do go, okay, we're getting back to a desirable trip. We're getting to a better surface with it improving. Lindemann doesn't handle that going as well. I was keen to back Lindemann, really keen to find it. And a couple of jocks have told me, like...
He's flying.
Yeah. But then I hate that I went down this well. I made the mistake of looking at Koval. Now, Koval's showed absolutely no positional speed this preparation. But up to 2,000, maybe there's an opportunity to settle a little bit closer. So they settled last start, and ran past Lindemann. Now they get a 3 kilo weight swing. I kind of like the 16 up to 2. And just on Koval specifically, debut prep, 16 to 2.
Smashes
Quick backup,
them.
smashes them. Next preparation in Queensland, 2,000 up to 2.4, smashes them in the Derby. So the quick backups worked.
Yeah.
Last preparation,
Nothing
ignore
went
it.
right. Yeah.
Well, they went to a King Charles. They tried to stay at a mile. So they went to a King Charles and they went to a Golden Eagle. And I think he's just a horse looking for further. So when I saw $34, kind of went, maybe you're the each-way play. I've got the favourite on top, but that's the each-way play.
I completely agree with you there. I'm keen to have some each-way money on Lindemann and Koval, but also Plastic Carousel. The other Yulong mare with Anthony and Sam Freedman, she has continued to improve over the last couple of weeks. In terms of where these two rank, Via Sistina and Plastic Carousel, with their European form, they're not too far apart.
No.
So-
I had a quick look through it. They haven't met.
No.
But
Well, they met first up, but
Yeah.
not in Europe.
yeah. So when you look back through that, there's Group 1s littered through both of their resumes, but they've just kind of dodged each other until the other day. How can you see Plastic Carousel turning the tables?
I don't think she can, but she's at a $13 quote, so I'm happy to play maybe them in my exotics if I have a first 4. You know what I might do? Via Sistina, Plastic Carousel, Kovalika, and maybe Pride of Jenny just to hang on for 4th.
Yeah, Pride of Jenny really threw me in a bit of a spin because she gets her own way up on speed. She's been great, but $4, how can you back her at $4 if Cascadian's $8.50?
Yeah.
When they met over 2,000 last start, and if anything, he is a proven 2,000 metre horse.
I
and
agree with you.
she's probably 16, 18
Yeah.
and brilliant enough to go very close.
Yeah.
Price-wise, that was an impossible case to make.
That's where I'll be kind of heading there. The Queen of the Turf, we just spoke about Waller and the quick backup with these two horses in the Queen Elizabeth. He has just got a bevy of beautiful mares ready for the Queen of the Turf. I'm with Zugotcha, looking for 3 on the bounce this preparation. She hasn't put a foot wrong. And I still think at that $3.70, $3.80, maybe even $4 quote on race day, she'd be a good play for me. She's already a proven Group 1 winner, loves the trip. There's nothing she's done wrong.
Her adaptability is remarkable. We've talked about it before, about that last prep and how they just got it wrong. She wasn't an Everest horse. But the way that she's bounced back and said, oh, right, now we're on the same page again and I'm going to start winning again, remarkable. I fell into the Alencia camp and I've been on this bus before and I've hopped off willingly and told the bus to. And then, sure enough, you saw what happened.
Yeah.
She comes out and looks like Winks again. So I just wonder whether we, for one reason or another, have just had the wool pulled over our eyes for a few starts and now we're seeing the real Alencia. Because I do genuinely believe that last start is the real version.
Well, I think part of this, and it's the same for both Zugotcha and Alencia, they've tried to turn these mares into sprinting superstars.
Yeah.
Whether it be Zugotcha in the spring of last year or Alencia when she joined Chris Waller's yard and she'd been racing in Adelaide and we're 1,200, and then go, nah, you know what? Both of these mares are milers.
Yeah.
And that's where they're best suited. So he's got a great hand in this race, alongside a Tissue as well. You can't ever rule her out.
No.
Proven Group 1 performer.
I did think last start was
Ho-hum.
ho-hum. What, just quickly on horses maybe changing tact, we'd Joe Pryden think about it. Where are we now at?
I don't know. I we discussed this on this very podcast a few weeks ago about the fact that he was the greatest sprinter in this country in the spring of last year, and his meteoric rise to fame was absolutely extraordinary. The decision for Joe to stretch him out in trip, I think it certainly raised eyebrows, and you can't begrudge him for doing that, especially with owner's permission and also based on the fact, of his breeding and his pedigree to get out to the mile. It hasn't worked. I think we can safely say that it hasn't worked. He's been game and gallant in defeat, but I would love to see him freshened up and run over the 1200. Maybe I think he's going to the all-aged. Maybe
14
that's
is more
more his
suitable
go.
now. Well, I think it's a very similar proposition to I Wish I Win. I think they are 1,400-metre horses, maybe a mile, but not yet. And it's also possible, in fairness to Joe, that you make the absolute right decision that goes the wrong way. And by so you think, it probably was the right decision. Even the race shape pattern suggested, maybe 14, 16, could we get to a Cox Plate trip? I think you had to see, because there was a chance that he wasn't just going to be the same horse at a longer trip, but an even better horse at a longer trip. And imagine if we never saw that.
The other thing that wasn't in his favour last week was the massive weight that he had to lug because of how well the Everest rates in terms of time form. So,
well, that in itself is another discussion.
Correct. So a Group 1 giving him virtually top weight, a big weight to carry over a trip he's never been over. That is hard to get your head around. Sydney Cup final, Group 1 of the day, and we will have an international hoop visiting to ride the favourite in Circle of Fire. Italian-born, Hong Kong-based hoop Andrea Azzini will be here. The 51.5 kilos interesting here. He rides light in Hong Kong, 52.5 every now and then, but he's going to have to work hard to get down to that 51.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really keen on Circle of Fire. Was keen the other day and won really well. What I loved about it was about the 150. I don't know what price Oval traded, but would have been particularly short, I would imagine. And then that staying pedigree really kicked in. And that last 150 was just
so
awesome.
lightly raced as well.
To get there. Yeah, so I still see upside there, and there are quite a few in that Sydney Cup that I know where they're at. They might be able to throw out a peak run here or there, but I do think Circle of Fire's best will probably be better than most. The weight's an interesting discussion because you brought it up last week and you've clearly got a bugbear.
I do, because we had 2 jocks stood down last Saturday due to wasting and being too dehydrated and not entirely with it to be able to ride at those really light weights. And whilst these weight scales, I mean, top weight in the Sydney Cup now, because we've been raised 1.5 kilos, is 56.5. Still seems light on. You've got jockeys having to really work hard to get down to those weights, and that's nothing new. But one thing that I do think is new in the last 15 years is the way that these jockeys now treat their bodies. They are athletes, and we frame them more as athletes than we did probably 15 years ago. They train. They have, I would love to think, bigger muscle mass nowadays.
Yeah.
They're not just living off cigarettes and Diet Coke.
And diuretics.
Yeah, things like that. So I think they're more athletic builds nowadays, which is great. They're getting the best out of their horses and the best out of their bodies. But to ask them to get down to some of these ridiculous weights, and I don't like that this shouldn't be a war of attrition in terms of weight. It's too dangerous a sport to be like that. So I look now at the weights in the Sydney Cup, and yes, we were raised 1.5 kilos. I think we should have been gone up to 2. It might have just made things a little bit easier. And some of those top hoops, they could be in with a ride as well, like Nasharawilla, James McDonald, no ride in the Sydney Cup.
Oh, no, there are plenty more in that list. I was only talking to Josh Parr and Sammy Clipperton even the other day, talking about how many rides they can kind of get on a given day. I mean, one's won an Everest and then struggling to get a ride. Another one's won a Golden Eagle, and he's arriving Golden Slipper Day with one ride. We've got a heap of jockeys. We've got quite a few that rode at the low weights. What do we have? 11 under 52 kilos in the Doncaster. Yeah. I agree that that's a bit off. What I don't want, wherever your weights are at, I just don't want a situation where we're having people needing to bend their bodies, bend the rules, and put themselves and others in danger. And you get the impression, brilliant job for standing down. I think that's the brave call. But I don't want them even to have to tempt fate on that front. So, yes, it's a rigorous sport. They put their body through all sorts of things. But, you know, we've gone through generations of bulimia, diuretics, as you said, smoking, life expectancy being 20 years below average. Yeah. It's already dangerous enough. We're past that. So if we need to have the discussion again, let's have it.
The other part to that is not only themselves being at risk and putting other people at risk if, you know, they've had to race too hard and things aren't cognitively all that clear. But if you're the owner of a horse and you get told an hour and a half before a Group 1, unfortunately, they've had to be stood down due to being too dehydrated. That's not on the jock. That's their job. Like, that's not on them. But the poor owner then going, oh, my gosh, well, who's going to ride my horse?
I go half a day without a meal. I'm a bit lightheaded.
Yeah.
No. It's exactly.
I don't think we're asking for the weights to be raised an exorbitant amount, but I think there has to be a discussion about the fact that going forward, these jocks, they are athletes, and that has certainly changed in the last 15 years. And as a result, I think we need to get up with the times and make sure that they are treated like that with a raise. Just a slight raise in the weights will make all the difference in the world.
Speaking of the olden days.
Oh, my gosh. So I'm going to have an each way play in the Sydney Cup on a maid. If you haven't caught the Adelaide Cup of this year, do yourself a favour. Poor Zach Spain. Iron's gone.
He's still got it. He's still icing them. He's still icing them. Yeah.
It was the most extraordinary performance, not only to stay on, but to ride out his mount without his irons and just miss for the minor money.
For anyone listening and hopefully watching, because you can maybe see a replay of his feet, just bear in mind that a mate of mine, I was on track for Adelaide Cup Day, and they put on a fantastic event, actually. There's been a few years where it's got a little sleepy down there in good old Adelaide, but it was a great day, and the new facilities are awesome. Anyway, as for the ride, a mate of mine had a couple of thousand on a mate. He said, there's no way this misses a place. There's no way this misses a place. I said, I actually tend to agree. It's then missed the start. It's had to hunt up to find a position. He's completely lost his irons, or the saddle slipped. I don't know which, to be honest.
I think he lost both irons. Yeah.
Anyway, and then he's gone around like that, and then still with 100 to go, it could potentially win. The final 50, it eventually falls in a hole, which is completely fair enough, only to be beaten this far running fourth. Like, it is one of the great
tales of woe.
And he spent the next hour ruining his day on the phone to a betting agency, pleading for, what do you call them when you say, this wasn't right? I've been wronged. And even more remarkably, I won't name who it was, but he got half of his bet back.
No way!
Yeah, as a bonus bet.
I hope he turned it into
well,
something.
because I think he once he vented, they were kind of like, actually, we just saw that. You're right. That was daylight robbery. Wow. Anyway, it was quite funny. It was
each way play, because I think we know he sees out the trip. He's had a little bit of time to recover since the incident. I think it would be great redemption for the horse. Yeah. He tries his heart out.
He does. I don't think he's quite at that level. I think he's a couple of lengths off.
Each way play, mate.
Okay, each way, yeah.
All right, he's a seasoned campaigner.
I'm not potting him or you.
All right, speaking of seasoned campaigners, great segue here. You wanted to tilt your lid to a couple of the old boys of the industry.
They don't need me to tilt my lid, but I will anyway, because Les Bridge, he really did outsmart a lot of people on the weekend. Everyone talks about how good his horse is, and I loved the line, actually. They said, when did you know you were going to win? And he said, when I bought him. I mean, that sums Les up. You better than anyone know that he can, be a bit monosyllabic with his answers in interviews. But
we've made up since then.
Right. But he could have run in so many races. I actually think they could have run in a fast-paced Everest and been competitive. He could have gone to all of those targets, but he wanted to get into the Doncaster with a lightweight. And when you reach a situation where a Doncaster Prelude winner that's come out of a benchmark 64, 4 runs prior, is carrying an extra kilo than you, and you've just won a Group 1.
It doesn't seem right.
You've done well.
You foxed them.
Yeah, and so shout out to Les. Shout out to Clary, who had a winner at the midweeks there at Gosford as well. Yeah, so a Hall of Famer, and I said to him, mate, do you watch on, throughout the carnival with as much interest as you used to? I think of you every time the Golden Slipper comes around. He said, I watch with more interest, and I just wish I had the horses to be able to compete because the prize money is a lot better than when I was winning them. But he's doing a great job. And even Ronnie Quinton was out there. He had at least a couple of placings. I think he sent 3 to the races yesterday. The old dogs can teach the young dogs a few tricks.
Absolutely. They've got the life experience on a racetrack to really pay dividend when they get it right.
Yeah.
Best for day 2, who's your biggest play going to be with?
Circle of Fire is my biggest result. Okay. So I'll lean that way. You?
There's a couple of really short price favourites that like Orchestral and probably Via Sistina that I'm not going to dive into because that's just not the way I punt. I don't look at those really short prices. But in the Fernhill Mile to begin the day, Rasp, James Cummings, Jamie Carr, up to the mile, perfect. I know we're coming out of a Wyong race, but I just have faith that he is a progressive 2-year-old getting to his right trip now.
Featured on Black Bookers. 7 p.m. Thursday night, Sky Thoroughbred Central.
Again, the double plug.
And the website for that Runner by Runner, everyone.
Enjoy day 2 of the championships. It's going to be a pearler at Royal Randwick. We'll be back next week for the All-Age Day.
Can't wait.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.